Hello, this is the BTC Training Center, and this is our first worksheet on Chapter 1. If you have a copy of the worksheet, you can go over it with us. The learning objectives in this chapter are the following. Understand key terms of the introduction to statistics, know the different data collection methods and how they are used, create and interpret frequency tables. The major idea of this chapter is to understand the difference between statistics and probability. Statistics is the process of collecting, organizing, performing analysis, and interpreting data. The final product of statistical analysis is the presentation of results of the data for understanding the population. Probability, on the other hand, is in the context of data collection. Probability is the random chance an outcome has occurred in the population. Probability, in the overall sense, is a mathematical model or tool to assess the outcomes of a random event. The key terms in this chapter are the following: population, parameter, sample, statistic, variable, data, and random sampling. For population, we are looking at the entire set of variable data available for a study. Populations are either defined or undefined by the research. A defined population knows all of the individuals available for the study. Parameter, a key measurement or number that is a defining attribute of the population's variable of interest. Population mean or population standard deviation are key parameters. Sample, it is a subset or proportion of the population that has been selected through a random data collection process. Statistic is a measure or a number calculated for a particular variable of the sample. Typically, we will see in the chapters sample mean and sample standard deviation. Variable, a measurement or a characteristic of an individual within the population. For example, we will see height and weight as a variable, or eye color, which is also a variable. Data, the actual values observed for a variable when collected from a population. And finally, we have this idea of random sampling. That is the process of selecting individuals from a population where each member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. In this chapter, we will understand the types of data. We can have a choice of quantitative data or qualitative data. Quantitative variables, numerical information that measures the outcome of an experiment. Two types of measures is discrete or continuous. Height and weight are examples of quantitative variables. Qualitative variables are information that describe the characteristic of an outcome of an experiment. For labels, for example, eye color is a qualitative measure, and therefore it's a qualitative variable. So the methods of sampling, we can see from a population, we can sample with replacement, where we take a unit from the population and then return it to the population for further sampling, or we can have sampling without replacement, where we take a unit from the population and we do not return it to the population. So the general sampling methods are with replacement, the process of selecting an individual from the population and returning the individual back to the population to possibly be selected again. And without replacement, the process of selecting an individual from the population and not being able to pick the individual again for the sample. In statistics, we have different methods of collecting data. The most common ones are the following: simple random sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, systematic sampling, and convenience sampling. Simple random sampling is used for defined populations, and it is the method of choosing n individuals from the population randomly. Each individual has an equal chance of being selected. Stratified sampling is the method to separate the data into common groups and then randomly sample each group. Each member of the group has an equal chance of being selected. This is also used for defined populations. For undefined populations where we don't know every individual in the population, we can use something called cluster sampling. The method is used to separate a population by geographical area or by a cluster, and then randomly select a cluster or area and survey all members of the cluster selected. Systematic sampling is also used for undefined populations, populations where we don't know every individual or unit in the population. This is a method of randomly selecting the nth individual from an ordered population based on a random starting point. And this is usually used in the manufacturing process of assembly lines or customer lines entering a store. Finally, we have the issue of convenience sampling, a non-random method of choosing individuals for a data set. These individuals are available and no research has been done on the target population. The final thing that we're going to talk about in this chapter is the method of counting. So the frequency is counting the number of outcomes for a variable based on a value, the number of times the value or number occurs in the data set. In our first example, 20 students were asked how many hours they worked daily while attending college. The following data in hours was collected from students: 2, 4, 5, 2, 2, 4, 6, 7, 7, 3, 2, 4, 5, 5, 7, 6, 3, 5, 4, 5. We're going to create a frequency table, and the frequency table in this particular case is the following. So here's our frequency table. The hours worked were 2, 3, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the frequencies were shown here in this particular example where we counted the number. So there were 4 2s, there were 2 3s, there were 4 4s, there were 5 5s, there were 2 6s, and 3 7s. This number here is called the relative frequency, and it's divided by the frequency divided by the total number of units. And in this case, we had 20 students. So 4 divided by 20 is equal to 1/5, right? Which is in fact 0.2. So here is 1/5, right? So we can create a relative frequency table in decimal form or by fractions. Well, this concludes the worksheet for Chapter 1. Please review Chapter 1. If you have any questions, please ask a tutor.